Welcome to Deep Look, Ulti World's weekly show about the current state of Ultimate. I am the host and senior editor, Keith Rayner, and I am flying solo for part of this podcast as our own Charlie Eisenhood is out for parental leave. And happy to be able to say that Louis Fritz Eisenhood was born on Thanksgiving, and they're all happy and healthy right now. So congratulations to Charlie and his partner Liz, and welcome Louis to the family. It's excited to hear from Charlie when we can get him on to hear about his new adventures in fatherhood as someone who just so recently went through that process. But hope everybody's getting some sleep, because I know that can be hard to come by. But for those of you who are here, welcome to the show. What we'll be up to while Charlie is gone is assorted some stuff. We got some end of year content coming up, but today we're going to be talking with Jake Thorne, who is at the U20 U.S. national team West Coast Tryouts. A little bit about what tryouts were like. He is someone who played on the team in 2 cycles ago, so someone who knows about the process intimately. And looking forward to hearing from him. And we'll also talk to Edward Stevens about what's going on at the Pan American Ultimate Championships, better known as PAUC, where we are live streaming right now. So we might not be literally as you're listening to this podcast, but as I'm recording this on Wednesday morning on the 29th, we are live streaming games. So if you're not checking out that coverage, you should be, because it's a lot of sweet Ultimate going on there. Before we get to those guests, I do want to touch on a little bit of news that's been going on. CCC, worth noting, did happen in the women's division. Georgia taking home the crown. Nothing shocking about that. Pretty much all regional level teams that they're playing against, and Georgia with a strong showing to start the year. And in the men's division, Brown gets the win over UGA, the hosting team there. Showing out as well. Nothing crazy to report from the tournament, but I do have a little bit of coverage and some video, so you can certainly check that out if you want to hear more. Also, some news coming out of the Premier Ultimate League. So this is kind of 2 prongs to this news, but the Columbus Pride will be taking this season off. They will be taking a break from this season with the intent to return next year in 2025. So no Columbus Pride, as their exact quote was, we plan to take the next year to reorganize our ownership structure, secure additional funding sources, update our mission, vision statements, and goals, engage with our community, and strategically plan and begin to execute how to accomplish these goals in sustainable and equitable ways. So the PUL then is left with 11 teams planning to compete. They're going to shift away from their 3 divisions to 2 with a North and South division. It feels like it makes a lot more sense. In the North, they plan to have Indy Red, Milwaukee, Minnesota, New York, Portland, and Philly. In the South, we'll have Atlanta, Austin, DC, Nashville, and Raleigh, with the intention for Columbus to join that group when they return in 2025. And the plan is to have top 2 teams from each division play in championship weekend. And teams will play everybody in their division and at least one cross-divisional matchup. I'm sure those will be super hype. Could get some real showcase games out of those cross-division games, and I love that kind of stuff. And that does mean that I think we'll see some unbalanced schedules. You're going to see teams with 5 or 6 games. If you have 5 games, obviously you can't have the same number of home and away games. Making the schedule is going to be a little bit tricky here, and I wonder how they're going to satisfy certain teams. We also potentially lose that great Portland to Austin trip. What a wild thing for them to be traveling to each other. They may not have to do that. Maybe they'll give the cross divisional chance, and they can they meet in like another team's venue or something? Can they meet halfway and play a showcase game? I don't know. We'll see. But the plan is for the schedule to come out in early January, along with the playoff qualification process. So we'll hear more from the PUL. But worth noting that is going on. I feel like that's most of the news. U.S. Canada announced that their U24 WC rosters. So you can check those out on the site as well. But that's pretty much the full size of the news. Well, I guess Also could note the college championships are headed back to Wisconsin in 2024. Will be in Madison for the Division I National Championships. D3 will be in Milwaukee. So last time we were in Madison was 2013 for college, but we had some tournaments there recently as well. So the Pro Championships were there in 2023. Milwaukee in Milwaukee, excuse me, they were there in 2023. That's where D3 will be. The 2022 College Championships were there also. So worth also noting that the finals or the stadium games for the D1 College Championships will be taking place at Breese Stevens Field, where the Madison Radicals play. So, when the strategic plan came out, there was talk about some partnership between the semi-pro leagues and USAU, and this feels like the first step towards that, right? This is a rare occurrence. You basically can't think of any. In fact, I'm not sure any USA Ultimate competition has ever happened at an AUDL venue. So we're in uncharted territory on that front. But that gets our news out of the way. So I'm going to jump into our first guest. I'll be having on Edward Stevens to talk a little bit about PAUC and what's going on down there. So stay tuned. Edward will be joining us in just a moment. Joining me now on the show is Edward Stevens, Athens-based, but really just to do it all superstar at Ultiworld, and right now based in the Dominican Republic. Edward, how is the DR treating you? And looking forward to hearing about PAUC from you.
Yeah, I'm here in Bávaro, just a little bit north of Punta Cana. Punta Cana is kind of the resort destination, is where PAUC is happening, and the Ultiworld team is at an all-inclusive resort, which is a first for me. I don't know if you've ever done the all-inclusive thing at on a vacation or on a cruise or anything like that, but I cannot get used to just having everything at my fingertips at all times. It's pretty weird.
So they're not kidding when they say all. Like it's all included.
It is all included. There's a second level of things that are even more included if you spring for it. But yeah, you've got food from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. in the evening. You've got tennis, archery, the beach, the pool. There's a karaoke night that sounds like it finally just wrapped up. And people are coming from all over. So you'll hear, Party in the USA, but then you'll hear your favorite Francis Cabrel slow jam from French class in 9th grade that like a legitimate French person is singing.
Oh, I definitely have one of those, whatever you just said. I also have one too.
Yep.
How do you feel about calling PAUC? PAUC is pretty easy. Like that's straightforward. But I guess really the question is, how do you feel about WUC?
I'm not comfortable with it. I have done it. I'll cop to having said it out loud in multiple conversations. Every time I talk to somebody who's coaching WUC or playing WUC, I say WUC, but I want to call that Worlds. That's what I want to call it.
I wonder I don't even know what the popular term is. Do people call it WUC, or is that just like people around the staff? I don't know if people call it WUC, but I think that's going to be forced into obsolescence by the fact that WUGC, or WUGC, as Daniel Prentice tried to call it. I hate that. I hate that term, not Daniel Prentice. But WUGC, as it were, has dropped the G. There's no guts. So now you have WUC and WUCC, and they're both Worlds.
Well, when we get Gulte back at the World Ultimate Championships, it can be WUGC again. That's my main mission in life.
Can we just partner up with pickleball and like piggyback off their popularity? Could it be Whoopsie?
Absolutely.
I
Who's going to say no to pickleball these days?
They probably go before us, so it's probably like what puck. The pickleball, I think, gets the top billing or something like that. But yeah, I wonder if there's pickleball down there in your resort. But so you got PAUC going on. where do we even start with this tournament? It's kind of an unwieldy beast in some ways, in that it's this uh, strange assortment of teams and rosters.
Well, that's the thing about PAUC. I sat down to write a preview a couple of days ago, and I was completely stuck. If you have been following the site, if you're one of our eager readers who was awaiting a PAUC preview, you'll notice that there never was one. And that's because every time I started to write it, I thought, what even is this tournament? I don't even know what I'm previewing. All I have is a list of teams, but they don't make any sense. The rosters are not contiguous for the most part with the rosters of the teams they represent. Some of the teams only exist for this tournament. I don't exactly know what's going on. That's what I thought 2 days ago. And I still, to a degree, think that. But I'm starting to get the sense that, of course, there's good Ultimate being played. There are good Ultimate players here. But there's kind of a divide between teams who are here because it is a vital part of their competitive experience and teams from northern climates who are dying for a week in the sun. So there are a lot of Canadian teams here. Most of the U.S. teams are from places in the northern half of the country. And then the most competitive teams are the Panamanians, the Colombians, the Venezuelans, to a lesser degree, the Argentinians. The teams from the Dominican Republic are here to compete hard. So there's a weird line between teams that are definitely here vacation first and teams that are definitely here ultimate first. That's what I've noticed around the fields.
So, where would you place this, like the level of play comparatively? Most of our audience is going to be following the U.S. Club Series. Like, where would you put this in, like, U.S. terms? Like, what level of play are we talking about at this tournament?
We're mostly talking about club regional level play.
Okay.
This is not nearly at the level of club nationals, with the exception of one or two teams per division. But it's a very strong regular season tournament, or a good regionals level tournament, especially because for some of the teams, they are actually in peak condition right now, the way that most American club teams are by the end of September.
So narratively, now you've had a chance to digest a little bit. You're through day one.
We're 1 day through 2 days of pool play.
But at this point, I think you probably get a sense of like who some of those teams are that are really in it to win it. Who are the favorites? Let's run down the three. From the three, I'm sticking to this term, but I'm going with prime. The three prime divisions. These are players who are in the prime of their careers. So to distinguish them from masters, grandmasters, youth, etc., calling these the prime division, the women's, the men's, and mixed division. So run down who are the favorites really in each of these divisions.
All right, now these are not the answers I would have given you before the tournament started. I want to be clear about that. But I do think there is at this point a favorite in each division. Let's start with the women's division because I feel like it's the most straightforward. It's the name everybody knows, and that's Revolution out of Medellin in Colombia. They don't have the Cardenas twins anymore. They split off to form their own Colombian club team this year, but they have a ton of other players. They've still got Gina Cartagena, Aleja Torres, they've got Jimena Montaña, and they have continued to develop a super deep stable of players behind them. Ana Maria Rojas has played really well so far this weekend, and they just throw out wave after wave. They're running force middle. They're the most professional team here. Their goal is to become a professional ultimate team. In most senses, they are one. I learned from their coach, Mauricio Moore, today that the top 11 players on the team get a full salary. They just set their budget to make that happen in the next year, and they pay every single player on the roster. Unlike the other teams who are spending out of their own personal budgets to be here on vacation, the team budget has paid for them to travel here and stay in a resort. And they are playing like it. I don't know that they'll win. There are another couple challengers. We can get to that when you ask about the challengers. But Revolucion is clearly the top dog in the women's division. They're coming off of a WUCC win, and they are acting like the champions. And then they've got, the hoopla around Revolucion. They're wearing their bubblegum pink jerseys. They're dancing with every team they play at the end of games, and it's just a blast having them here. They're the belle of the ball.
Any real challengers for this team?
Yeah, so there are no American women's teams. You'd think that most of the top 5-ish U.S. club teams would have a shot to win a tournament like this against Revolucion, but there aren't any of those teams here. So I think the top challenger, based on what I've seen so far, is actually one of their own rivals in Colombian Ultimate, Aerosol, who is not a team I've seen in person before, but Aerosol are playing really, really well. They're playing lights out, and you could argue that the throwing is crisper and the running is faster on the Aerosol side than it is on the Revolution side. Through one day of play, this is small sample size, and they haven't played each other. But Bogota Aerosol, I think they're out of Bogota, are really good. They're a legitimate threat to take this team over Revolution.
Well, that would be a pretty exciting upset. I think that would have some shockwaves internationally. It would not go unnoticed, even if this tournament is not necessarily featuring like all the best teams in the world. That beating Revolution is always going to get you on the radar. I mean, that could be the best team in the world. So
they could do it. And then there are a couple dark horse candidates as well. I like Stella out of Canada, who have picked up a couple of American players. Helen Eifert and Kez Gessel are playing with them, and that whole crew is big. They're coordinated. I don't know. I like what I'm seeing from them early. There were 9 games happening simultaneously today, so I never stayed too long on any one. But Stella are undefeated so far. They look good. And the other team is Wakanda out of Argentina, and they've picked up some real heavy hitters out of America. They've got Taylor Simpson and Paige Howell, who played for Starling, who kind of got lost in that Northeast brouhaha to claim one of those 3 bids. They didn't make it, so we didn't really see them on the national stage. But they had some players. Those are 2 of them. I think they're strong all the way through. I don't know if they're coordinated enough to beat a well-coached professional Revolution team, but they might have the talent to have a dogfight and win at the end. So there's some intrigue there for sure.
Incredible name, slightly confusing.
I don't understand it as a name. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's like there's a I think they're a Colombian team that's often at WCC called Colorado. It's it's just like I've lost every time. Gets me every time. All right. How about in the open division? Who's the big favorite?
Open division. Now, this is one I've completely changed my tune on. A lot of people, when they looked at the team list, their eyebrows are raised. They saw Pony was going to be there. Maybe they thought New York Pony were going to run away with it. But this isn't really New York Pony. This is John Randolph, Cam Warner, Michael Brenner, who I don't think was on like the big main Pony roster this season. He's been a Pony player many years in the past. And then just whoever else they could convince to come to the tournament with them. So they are Pony in name only. As a matter of fact, on their jerseys, it says Pride of New York and New Jersey. They're embracing the fact that they're just kind of a big circle of friends and not really Pony at all.
What cowards to not put phony on the jersey? It's like so obvious.
It's right there.
Cowards.
I think they wanted to give you the chance to call them out on it. They set you up. You knocked it down perfectly. But yeah, they lost a game today. They lost their first game against Comunidad El Oso, who are one of the top Colombian sides. As a matter of fact, the Colombian teams in general, this is going to be a trend, are playing super, super well at this tournament. But Comunidad El Oso won the Colombian national tournament. They have a bunch of good players already. They've got Dante. This kid's new to me, but a young kid who's just made the Colombian national team that hasn't been released yet. But Dante, I'm going to get his last name for you. It is Dante Carvajalino. is, I don't know if he's 18, 19, 20, but he's really young and he is doing everything right out there for now. Keep an eye out for him when we actually get to WOC in Australia next year. Kevin Nariño is playing really well, and then they've got the veteran Ivan Alba, who is an absolute pellet, launching himself from an invisible slingshot anytime he's on the field on defense. And he gives up height against most people he plays against, but he gets huge blocks. He absolutely blew up a reset to John Randolph earlier today. And Oso won that game. That being said, I don't think Oso are the favorites either, because there is a Dominican team here called the Blue Devils who are good on their own, and they've picked up a ton of extra international help. So they have a few of the truck stop guys. They've got AJ Merriman, Tyler Monroe, and Andrew Roy from Truck Stop. They've got Jeff Holm from Pony, not playing with Pony, but playing with Blue Devils here, the Dominican team.
All three of the teams we've talked about, Pony, Comunidad also, and Blue Devils, all have people who have been on Pony at some point. I really don't. Is Pony only division? What am I looking at here?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, it's open to Pony players only. That's why they call it open. But yeah, these guys are good. Trent Dillon is playing with them, and crucially also the World Games player Andres Ramirez from the Colombian team is picking up with them as well. And they're looking polished. And not only were they looking polished in their games today, they played one game today and they absolutely crushed it against the Argentinian team El Combo. Shout out to my own club teammates Skylar and Zach who play on that team. But after that game, they finished so early that there was an hour for them to use the field before the next game started. And Andrew Roy started taking the whole team through the finer points of setting up a front of stack offense and creating little 3-on-3 zones. And I thought, this guy has taken a good team and is teaching them the truck stop offense. I think they're the favorites right now. I think the hometown-ish Blue Devils from the Dominican Republic could win this tournament on the open side.
That sounds like a pretty fun storyline to potentially push to fruition. I'll be curious. This setting up some interesting narratives in the open division. Any other teams to discuss there, or are you ready to move on to mixed?
Yeah, I want to just run down the list of the other three big Colombian teams that are here. There's Macawua, who have my own. I'm not going to be shy about this. My own personal favorite player in Ultimate right now, Jonathan.
I know
Cantor.
exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, love that guy. He's like a walking diagram of the Hex offense. And he plays in a mask, which makes him super cool. He was on the stream earlier today playing Warao out of Venezuela. He had an awesome game. If you watch any game this week from this tournament, watch that one just so you can watch Cantor play. They did lose a game later, but they're looking pretty punchy and pretty good. Also, Flota Chancle is another Colombian team that is undefeated as of today and looked really good taking apart what I thought was going to be a pretty darn strong Ush Mafia team from Panama, who's picked up a number of Americans to play with them. And the last of the four big Colombian teams is Uro Monster, who absolutely tore apart Omen. So Omen are one of the American clubs. They played Club Nationals, if you remember, in 2022. Didn't quite get the second bid to make it in 2023, and frankly, they lost to Beacon anyway, so they wouldn't have made it out of the Great Lakes. But they're a good American team, and Uro Monster destroyed them. It was something like 15-7 or 15-8. So they've got four Colombian teams on the open side, three on the women's side, and another pair on the mixed side who we'll talk about soon, I'm sure, who are all undefeated. Colombian Ultimate is in a great place right now.
Taking over PAUC. It makes some sense that this is a place where they're performing well, but obviously it's also a nation that's produced a lot of talented teams and players. So no big shocker there, but we'll see. Colombia's sweep. That would be quite a thing.
It's possible.
All right, so mixed division.
I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Who's the top dog in the mixed division?
I hate to just go the easy American route, but Dragon Thrust are here. They brought a pretty Dragon Thrusty team. It's not the full Dragon Thrust experience, but Aaron McCann is playing with them. Josh Klein is playing with them. They picked up James Pollard. I think that even though there are some other mixed teams who are looking strong early, I don't know how any of them are going to run with Dragon Thrust long term, frankly. I think they're too good. So that's the short answer.
Not exactly the roster we're used to, but this looks like a roster that could, play at Club Nationals and compete.
Yep. Now, there are a couple teams that I haven't seen play yet. There are 18 or 22 fields, and I saw the first 10 of them today. So games that didn't happen on those fields, I didn't get a chance to look at. So I haven't seen an undefeated team out of Colombia called Academia. I haven't seen Noise play, although I spoke to a couple of Noise players and found out they only had 11 players today. That's supposed to change tomorrow. Apparently there was some flight mix-ups, but they kind of barely hung on to be undefeated today. I'll tell you who I did see, though, who look really, really good, and that is another Colombian team. Surprise, surprise. They're called Zen Ultimate Club. I hadn't seen them play before, but they are massively talented. They come with big banners and sponsors. They wear green instead of pink, but in a lot of respects, they act on the field like a mixed division version of Revolution. They totally controlled both games that I saw, and they're playing Dragon Thrust tomorrow, and that's appointment viewing. I'm going to be on that sideline for most of that game. I think they have a shot to beat Dragon if anybody does.
Either of the other American teams merit discussion. You got Noise. You mentioned. Well, I guess you mentioned Noise, but what about Mischief? And Union is another North American team that's near the top of like the gold diff after just the game or two that they played today.
Yeah, now I didn't see Union today either. They were on the far fields. I'll catch them on day 2 tomorrow. I did see some action from Mischief. They won the game and they won it big, but I have to say they're looking a little rusty and dicey so far. I'm not sure I see this Mischief team as better than a semifinalist at this tournament, which is pretty good. I mean, they're competitive. They have plenty of good players. Vivian Chu had a really nice game from what I saw. And number 5, Matthew Crawford, was out there throwing bombs today. He finished today with 5 assists. But at the same time, I feel like they're missing a piece, missing a connectivity. This may be the kind of tournament where it doesn't matter that much, but I still feel like it puts a limiter on top of them. You can't drive 50 miles an hour in a golf cart, and I feel like they're a tricked out golf cart of a team. And I hope they hear this and fucking prove me wrong. Excuse my language, Keith. You can dump that out.
No, I'll just have to mark explicit on the show and see, just like adults only. You gotta a lot of jump through some. I gotta talk to our lawyers, but otherwise, it's just no big deal. All right, well, so it sounds like there's quite a bit to follow along with at PAUC. We have live streaming coverage throughout the week, so definitely you'll want to tune in for that and catch up with the stuff you may have missed between the live streams with the recaps here coming from Edward. But it should be a pretty fun week of Ultimate with some pretty high level play. It sounds like from what I'm hearing.
I think so, and the thing I'm most excited about is outside of just seeing the Ultimate community get together outside of their normal zones of contact is starting to get a sense of who we are going to see on the national teams for next year's WOOC. This is like a great place to preview the next big players on the major international scenes. So I'm super excited for that.
I love that you're getting this breadth of international reporting experience between this and like the World Games. Like you're gonna be up there as far as like people who understand the global Ultimate scene. You're like getting a lot of knowledge in.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna rack up the miles too.
Well, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking with us about PAUC. So that's it for Edward Stevens and PAUC. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Deep Look. Now, welcome on to the show, Jake Thorne, Alameda, California-based reporter who got a chance to head out to the under 20 U.S. national team West Coast Tryouts. Jake, welcome on to Deep Look, and looking forward to hearing about what the kids were up to.
Yeah, Keith, thanks so much for having me. 14-year-old Jake is just so hyped right now that I'm on this, and present year Jake is equally as hyped. So thanks for having me.
Did you go to the tryouts when you were a youngster?
Not as a spectator, but I was actually on the team in the 2018 cycle. Definitely wasn't the best player on the team, but I did my part. I was the warm-up music guy. I got 1 point in the final, so I did my part for the team for sure.
Well, that'll inform our perspective here as we go into this, because we can do a little contrasting as to what it was like and for your personal experience and for the team you're on and what you might expect from this. But know, folks at home, that Jake's seen this from the inside, so he knows a thing or two about it. So you were out at these West Coast tryouts, and tell me a little bit about what the setup was like, what they had the players going through, and what the environment was.
Yeah, so I get to the fields on the first day, so day one of the tryout, and I will say, like, the nerves seemed pretty high for most of the players. And as they did their initial huddle and got into warm-ups, it was pretty quiet. Like, I would expect the voices to be a little bit higher and the energy to be a little bit more revved up, but it took a while for a lot of the players to get comfortable navigating their rhythm and getting comfortable with each other. There were a few standout players that, like, okay, this is just another game of Frisbee for them. Like, they're ready to go. They immediately stood out as players that had a good chance to make the team. And then, like, I feel like it's easy to look at a player and at a trial like this, and someone who has, like, strong stature or is more developed physically. There's a wide range in this age group of their development. And there was one player, though, or there's a couple players that really stood out, even though that they weren't the tallest or they weren't the biggest. And that's because they had, like, super noticeable strong disc skills. And those players were Axel Olsen and Chloe Hakimi. Going into some of the drills that they had to do, I guess it was pretty standard stuff. I don't think they want to throw anything like too crazy at these players. It's going to be a stressful environment for them anyway. But I think some of the interesting drills that were done were like 3v3 full field against each other. Some like possession oriented drills, some salmon ladder type stuff, and then just a whole lot of scrimmaging.
Oh, good. How did it compare to what your experience was when you were trying out? Like, is it the same? How different a setup are we talking about as far as the structure of the actual tryouts themselves?
So it was very similar. I can only speak to the boys' side because this year they added a mixed division, so they were crossing over more. But the difference between the boys was we had to do a brutal, like, full field suicides, and we had to do it twice. And my partner was Calvin Brown, and we got last place doing the suicides. We survived, but the boys didn't have to do the conditioning this time. The girls did, though. And I ran over as I saw they were doing conditioning because I like to see who wins those, because usually the people who win the sprints are, like, the fastest people and therefore pretty likely to make the team.
So you and Calvin are slow is what you're trying to tell us.
Yeah, and one of us is slow. Yeah, we'll say that.
One of you. Well, you've done pretty well for yourselves since then.
Yeah.
Which is, like, obviously, like, honestly, the most exciting part about this from a spectator standpoint is, like, getting to see these players of the future and some of the now. I mean, you mentioned two of the names, Chloe Hakimi and Axel Olsen. I think those are two of the most highest profile players that people, if they've been following along with Ulti World's coverage, like, already have a sense of who they are. But that's giving a chance to, like, introduce these players to people is one of the most fun parts. So it's worth mentioning, you mentioned that this will be the first year that we're sending a mixed team. We have not competed in mixed in the past. So that means you're going to have a greater number of players selected this year. So we'll be kind of formulating a new process, so to speak, but give us a chance to get the full sweep in the medal stash. And I think that's probably the U.S. delegation is starting to feel a little bit of heat from the international community, so they want to go out and get as many golds as possible. I think it's not going to be a far cry that all of these under 20 teams are going to be their favorites before the rosters. There's no combination of players I think they could put on these rosters that wouldn't make the U.S. the favorite based on the tryout lists.
Right.
So let's look a little bit. Obviously you're only going to get to see roughly half of the players at these tryouts, and even then you're going to get a limited view. But I'm curious to get your impressions about some of the players coming out of this first tryout, and some of the big time plays maybe that you saw. That's you get to see some real highlights when you get to go to these tryouts. So let's start on the boys' side. Who you mentioned, Axel Olsen. In fact, there's probably not enough people who know about how good this young player is. So just talk a little bit about what made him stand out so much in the field.
Yeah, it's pretty much just his throwing ability. And I mean, he's a solid athlete too. He definitely had some skying grabs, had some solid blocks. He's obviously a smart player too. But yeah, I mean, the force that he can put into the ground and translate into the disc just flying so far and so beautifully it's really a sight to see. I think, like, even if comparing him to like the club division, I think he would be a very strong thrower for the club division. And I mean, I could be mistaken about this, Keith, but isn't he some like disc golf like prodigy?
Yes, he's very good at disc golf.
Well, Axel, you might just want to hang it up, bro. I mean, like, if all of the money, man, I mean, we would love to see you in Ultimate, but I mean, just judging by how you can spin that disc, I think you could go pretty far in disc golf too. But yeah, he's excellent.
He may be able to do both.
Yeah. Other than him, I think the other player that stood out to me was Grayson Repberg from Salt Lake City, Utah. He kind of reminds me of like Xander Cuisinart. He's like, I would say he's like 5'9", 5'10", just like wicked fast, like just dominates the cutting lanes. No one can touch him the whole time. And I think his throws still need a little bit of refining, like his short range, like flick, like swing, which is something I really struggle with. It's a tough like touch throw, but he's got those away shots. So if he can dial in like just those quick little swing passes, like he'll just be so deadly. I think he projects as a player that will be like the plus minus leader for whatever team he makes. I think he's pretty much a lock.
So what other players were players that really stood out to you on the boys' side?
Sure. Thomas Schoep from Minnesota, I believe, was a practice player for Sub-Zero and got some run at, I'm not sure exactly the tournament, but apparently, according to some Sub-Zero guys I talked to, really popped off against Vault and was just cooking them. He kind of reminds me of like Matt McKnight and Leo Silver Fernandez if you combine them into one, kind of like a lurching figure, and just really solid decision maker. I mean, it was pretty blustery out there at Tryouts, and I really didn't see him any mistakes at all. Unfortunately, he got hampered with, I think, a hip or a groin injury toward like the middle of day two. So I had him ranked, I think, number 7 in the subscription article, but I think he could have been even higher than that if he didn't get injured. Couple others, Dominic Chiotti, kind of like undersized cutter and like exploded for a lot of layout blocks, and I think he's got a really good shot to make the team. Totally. A few other guys too, and like I think this is a trend for both boys and girls. It's just like Seattle just continues to show up so well at these U20 tryouts, which is weird because their college teams seem not to do like that great compared to how much talent they actually have, and obviously their club teams haven't done as well in the past few years too. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening with their pipeline, but I mean their youth talent is just exceptional. Cedar Hines, Mason Stone, I mean Axel's from Seattle too. Philippe Isev. So Cedar is just like super confident, like super apparent, like swag on him, just like was just ready for the tryout. Mason Stone kind of reminds me of Alex Atkins, maybe like not exactly like the same personality, but like tall, like handler that is also super athletic and can explode for like just like a good playmaker. And then Philippe is just like a deadly hybrid type player that kind of struggled a little bit compared to his reputation day one, but really turned it on day two and ended up as a top 10 player, in my opinion, by the end of tryouts.
All right, so let's take a look at the girls division side, and I feel like people are pretty familiar with what Chloe Hakimi brings to the table at this point. Were there any other players that like really were at that like elite, like wow, this person's basically a lock based on what I'm seeing?
Yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, I mean, Rachel Chang was phenomenal. The issue is they're dealing with some like hampering injuries, it seems like. So they only played day one. But yeah, I mean, just a player with super strong throwing base and like can step out super far and just has experience dominating and not making mistakes. So I think though Rachel Chang and Chloe Hakimi will probably be the center handlers. Obviously, I didn't see anyone at the East Coast tryout, but I can't really see anyone else stepping into that role that would be better than them. Some players that I wasn't familiar with prior to the tryout though, Ella Widmeyer, super strong, capable handler, like just confident, knows what she's doing out there. And like sometimes during a tryout, like the less confident players will really just like trust in one player to get them to the finish line. And she would go every other pretty consistently when she had players on her line that were maybe a little bit less hip to elite level frisbee. Margot Neeson, I didn't know. I think it's Jacques' sister. If so, didn't know Jacques had a sister.
Is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, she's great handler. Similar to Ella, like a lot of the weaker throwers at the tryout really relied on her to push the ball downfield. I think she's got a really great shot to make the team. Ava Hayes, I'm a huge fan of. I think she's going to be a superstar. She's got experience playing high level mix, so I think she'll be a very premium pick for the mixed division. She reminds me of Ella Jungst. I mean, if you squint and look at them like from far away, like they look pretty similar too. And she's a lefty and super fast, dominates the cutting lanes, and also is a great defender as well. So I think she has got a very bright future. And then also on the cutting side of the disc, Audrey Selfridge, which I think is Will Selfridge's sister, is just like, yep. I'm super high on her. And I think, honestly, this might be blasphemy, but might have higher upside than both Rachel and Chloe. I think she's got like Dawn Colton-esque like profiling. By the way, like she can throw, she can dominate athletically, and she can defend. And if you look at her YCC stat line, I don't know exactly the line, but she dropped a triple-double on like really high efficiency. So obviously the Utah coaches speak super highly of her. I'm really excited to see where she decides to play collegiately and what her club future looks like as well.
Super, super talented. I remember her, I think, as like a sophomore in high school, and she was already one of the best players on the Utah teams, almost purely on just being fast, strong, aggressive.
Yep.
So definitely a player I'm interested to see how she develops, but definitely an exciting group. I mean, on this side, you actually have some returners in Hakimi and Chang, who are two players who played with the U20 team last time out. So, you know, obviously their reputations are already really strong, but you also look at the fact that they've already done this before. I think that they're, you know, basically locks and will be the core members of whatever teams they're on. They're going to be counted on a lot. So I definitely agree with that. And worth noting that Margot Nissen actually played at last year at the 2022 World Junior Ultimate Championships with France. She was on the French team that made it to the final. So she's also had some high level youth experience, and this time could be doing it for the U.S. And probably I don't want to watch out for France if it comes back around. And I think that they're going to be a tough customer. So, you know, obviously only haven't seen these West tryouts and not really getting to see the East tryouts and not getting exactly into. I don't want to go into like, okay, who specifically do we think is going to make the roster? It's not the same as when we do it at U24 or when we talk about World Games where we have like tons of film and lots of games and like really in-depth knowledge. Like some of these players, they may have changed a lot over the past like year of their career.
Right.
It's just how it is in high school. But I am curious about, from your perspective, having been there, about what you have observed about how these teams are constructed. What goes into, what are the coaches looking for in building a team? I'm curious to get your perspective as someone who's actually gone through that process. What do you think the coaches are looking for, and how do you think that factors into who ends up making it onto these rosters?
Yeah, so I was given pretty strict rules from USAU not to speak with coaches, not to distract them. But Keith, you know me, like I can't not like emote on the sideline and get to know the coaches a little bit. But the head coaches, they were all pretty steel traps. Like they didn't really give me much. So, Reed didn't really give me much about their process. Deanna didn't really give me much about their process. Martin didn't give me much about their process. But having been through the tryouts and having been through, other tryouts as well, I think I have a pretty good idea of what the selection criteria will be. First and foremost, it's got to be talent. It's the heart of every selection process. It's raw talent. You got to be able to, throw dime hucks, make acrobatic grabs, read the game, make quick decisions. But talent alone, although it's super important, it's just one piece of the puzzle. You also have to be a really great system fit with Team USA, which is a big adjustment for all of these superstar youth players to adapt to, because a lot of them are just like that guy or that girl on their team. And it's hard to, go from looking down the field for 7 seconds to being yelled at by the sideline to swing the disc at stall 3 or 4. So the players that can adapt their game to a more system type style of offense and defense are those that are going to be able to succeed on Team USA. And then you did say that these players change pretty rapidly, and I think that's true, but reputation does play a factor as well. It just serves as a backdrop against which their performance can be evaluated. And because we have such a lack of historical data in Ultimate Frisbee, I think YCC stat lines could actually be pretty informative. And I've included those in the subscriber articles as well, just as a little fun little tidbit. And then lastly, I feel like people don't want to acknowledge this, but politics is a big part of these tryouts. Can you make friends and influence people? Can you go to the coaches and engage them in a discussion and ask for feedback in a way that doesn't seem like you're doing it just to curry favor with them? That is a big part of making this team, is showing that you can be an individual who can contribute positively to the overall delegation and get along, play nicely with the coaches and the players as well.
Okay, when you said politics, that sounds so shady. I want to have these people on because they're friends with these people, as opposed to this sounds like it's more like chemistry. Can you become a team? And I actually think that's something that these U.S. teams think about a lot, because while in some of the other countries, I think they get an opportunity to practice a lot more. The U.S. obviously is so spread out that there are really limited opportunities to play together. And so I think one of the things in general that U.S. national team coaches are looking for, or even instructed to look for, is how fast can you become a team? Because it's you basically have a week and a half to figure it out between your whatever practice weekend you get and the actual event itself. So I do think that's something that coaches are looking for. And I also think that part of that, you mentioned earlier how good these Seattle players do at these tryouts and how so many of them make the team. And every year these rosters come out, and one of the first things I hear is oh my gosh, too much Seattle, not enough X, Y, and Z community. Usually it's not Boston or Atlanta that's complaining. It's or Raleigh. It's the South other Central communities that are complaining. Yeah. The smaller communities where they maybe don't get representation as frequently. And part of the challenge I think that those players have to overcome is that the Seattle players are used to playing with a bunch of other elite players. You talk about someone like Ella Widmeyer, who can go every other, can be your core handler on a team. But how many times has she played with a bunch of other Seattle players where it's she already knows what it's like to be a cog in the system? And some of these other young players, they're used to getting the disc on every possession. They're either initiating the play, they're tapping the disc in, they're guarding the best player on the other team. They're not used to playing as the sixth player on the line, or going whole possessions without touching the disc at all, making a hard clear or whatever. That's stuff they're not used to unless they're getting those reps elsewhere playing with other levels of competition. So I think that's something that actually favors these well-established youth communities where they have a bunch of chances to play together. They also have access to playing against college and club players, and there's a really integrated community that can help you build up that skill set, when otherwise, if you're kind of in a place where there's less opportunity to do that, there's less opportunity to have those connections, then it can be challenging to build that part of your game to being a complementary player as opposed to just being a star. But I also think the coaches know that. They probably are trying to account for that a little bit in their head. You don't want to write somebody off just because of a weekend, but that is the challenge of being a coach and making these decisions. Is you get a real snapshot. And I wonder how much, you mentioned reputation, in some ways you need to get all the information you can. So if you can talk to other coaches, talk to other people who watch these players play at other times, and maybe you're looking at state, you can't look at this. I would say you would look at state awards, like who is all state in their respective high school
Do
leagues.
they even
but,
do that anymore?
Stuff barely gets published. As someone,
Yeah.
really couldn't tell you. I think like
Yeah.
maybe Minnesota does it. Like
In high school, California did
that
it, but I don't think they do it anymore. I wish though.
I wish that stuff would come back.
Yeah.
It's such a cool shout out for the kids, but definitely these teams are going to be really exciting and fun to watch, and a chance to start to build up these stars. I mean, we're just as well, we're coming around to college season. Yeah. CCC's already happened. We're working on our 12 days of college content, and first up is going to be those first years, and players from this list are going to be big time talked about. We've got a bunch of 5-star recruits already kind of establishing themselves, and these are stars of tomorrow, and like some of these players are basically already like elite club level players right now. So it's pretty exciting to see. How do you think, from what you saw at tryouts, how do you think the you that tried out for the team last time around, how do you think you would do at these tryouts?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, let's be honest. I made the team because I got a lot of layout Ds. And in a blustery environment where throws are a little bit less accurate, I think I'm getting even more layout Ds this time. So I think I still make the team, but who knows? I think it's hard to compare like the strength of my tryout in 2018 to 2022 because I was much younger back then, and it's hard because you're comparing yourself to people you think are just like more advanced than they actually are, if that makes sense. And I don't know, like, does this tryout cycle have an Orion Cable, Henry Ing type player? I don't know. That's yet to be seen. It's always interesting to compare, like, okay, which is the best Worlds team that you've like Reed has ever coached, for instance, and who does he think would be the best, like the winner of if they pitted up against each other? I don't know.
Skill is hot right now. When we talk about the top end players, you were like, it was Chloe Akimi, it's Rachel Chang, it's Axel Olsen. Like, these are high skill players. These are not like, oh, I'm 5'10" in the girls division, or I'm 6'5" or whatever, and like I'm just gonna out muscle you. Like, it's like they're great athletes, all three of them. But that they're players with a ton of skill. So that maybe that's what's hot right now.
In the subscribers article, sorry to interrupt. I will say that I do have a bias towards like big, tall, athletic people. And I think that's because in the international game, these teams know they can't beat the USA in a clean fight. They know that they gotta like get a break early and then hit on their high variance looks. So there's even a player on the boys' side, Truman Abbott, who honestly, doesn't have the most refined throws or anything, but he probably had 10 Ds throughout the tryout and never lost like defensive 50-50 ball. So, I mean, do you take that kid based on his just like very apparent superpower and just kind of take the blemishes as well and try and coach him out of it? It's a tough thought experiment to undergo.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're talking about these kids under 20, like, you're not going to get what they need, 60, 65, 66. You're not going to get 66, perfect players who are all well-rounded, like elite club players. So you're going to have to take some players who are flawed, and it's totally okay to be a flawed player at 16, 17, 18. I know I was. Taking those kind of players and figuring out how to assemble the team and make the best team you can is definitely part of the challenge. I will also say, if there is any young player listening who will have a chance to try out for one of these teams in the future, or is thinking about like U24s, like, please apply. I regret so much when I was a young player not applying for tryouts. I scared myself out of it. I said I didn't think I'm good enough to do it. And even if I had just gotten the invite to tryouts, like, I do not think I would have had any shot of making the team. But just going to tryouts would have been sweet. And even just like sitting down and thinking about your game and like analyzing yourself and like talking to other people about how you play, and like, I think all that stuff's actually good for you as a player. So I think apply, take the chance. If you've never considered it, like, do it. I tell all the players I coach for U24s who like I think would benefit from that competitive experience, like, apply. Like, I will back you up. I'll be honest. I'm never gonna, like, as a coach, I'm never gonna like overstate you, but I'll be honest with the coaches. But I will go to players and be like, you should apply for under 24 tryouts. Like, it's a great experience. The worst thing that happens is they say no, but like, it's a great experience to be there. So take your shot, shoot your shot. It takes a little bit of work, but I think it's really rewarding. And I think you probably could say certainly everybody I've talked to has been like, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So.
And in closing for me, I mean, for the players who were at the tryout and maybe won't make the team, like, don't take it too personal. It's not an indictment on you as a player, or maybe do take it personal and grind and go make that U24 team. But there have been plenty of superstar type players who haven't made that U20 team. Like Joe White didn't make U20. Callum Brown didn't make U20. I'm sure there's a bunch of others as well. So keep grinding, and you'll get there eventually if you put in that work.
Yeah, Joe White stinks though. So don't be like Joe White. He's bad. No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely a complex process, and certainly like you're young. You got a lot of time to get better and continue to improve as a player. And there'll be lots of other great opportunities to play. This is just one of them. But looking forward to it, Jake. Thanks for coming on and telling us a little bit about bringing us a little bit into the world of the U20 tryout. It's kind of like a closed window. There's not a lot of people who get to look into this. So I'm excited that we got somebody on with firsthand knowledge, both from personal experience and from being at the tryout. But appreciate you coming through and telling us a little bit about it. Yeah, I mean, this is unprecedented coverage, y'all. Check out that article. It's pretty fire. Yeah, definitely. If you're a subscriber, check out the article Jake's got coming out. Where he'll go a little bit deeper on some of the top players and maybe even talk about some of who he thinks is going to make it onto the roster, who he'd be picking. So if you're not a subscriber, you can become a subscriber. It's pretty affordable at the lowest level. You'll always hear the like cup of coffee kind of thing. It's really about that level. And you'll get access to that subscriber bonus episodes from all of our podcasts, including today's, where I'll be talking with Edward Stevens about some Club Awards hot takes. So if you are not a subscriber, consider becoming a subscriber, get access to Jake's work and Edward's and so many other folks here at Ultiworld. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Deep Look. Thank you so much to Jake Thorne and Edward Stevens for coming to join us. And thank you to you for coming and stopping by and listening to the show. No question of the week this week, but if you do have questions, we will probably try and handle a 2-pack next week. Get in our Discord. There, our subscribers can let us know if they have questions, or you can always tweet at us at Deep Look Pod. So sub bonus segment for those of you who are subscribers. I'll catch you there. Edward Stevens and I will be talking about some Club Awards hot takes. Edward always brings the fire when it comes to the takes. So if you are a subscriber, you can join us there. And if you're not, consider subscribing, support the work that we do. We couldn't be bringing all these tournaments to you without it. And hopefully you'll get some great content that you really enjoy along the way, like Jake Thorne's article about the U20 tryout players and like Edward's subscriber hit that we're about to do. But if you're going to be just listening to Deep Look, we'll catch you next week.